Okay, let's get into this story. And listener, prepare yourself because this one is, well, it's pretty unbelievable.
It really is. We're talking about a mother-in-law who, it seems, deliberately infected her own grandchild with chickenpox.
Deliberately. It just sounds completely outrageous from the start, and the details, as we found out, are genuinely disturbing.
Yeah, it throws you straight into this really tangled web of family dynamics, clashing beliefs about health, parenting.
Right, and control too?
Oh, definitely control. The way one person apparently tried to override the parents' decisions about their child's health is quite something.
Mm-hmm. So this whole account comes from a Reddit post. It was on the Best of Redditor Updates subreddit, which is often, quite intense.
It is. You get these very raw personal stories. And this user gives this firsthand account of a family incident that just spiraled.
And it all happened during what was meant to be, a nice family Christmas visit.
Exactly. So the basic setup is this young couple, they have a 13-month-old daughter named Annie.
Little A.
Yeah. And they drive like 12 hours to spend a couple of weeks over Christmas with the husband's family. It's Annie's first Christmas. She was born the September before.
So a big deal. They're probably hoping for a really special family time.
You'd think so, but the post mentions there was already some low-level friction before this big event happened.
Ah, okay. What kind?
Things like, disagreements over parenting styles, disposable diapers versus cloth, supermarket baby food versus making everything organic from scratch, that kind of thing.
Okay, familiar territory for some families, maybe, but
Yeah.
usually just minor stuff.
Seemingly minor, yeah. But often those little things point to bigger underlying tensions, right? About control, about whose way is right, especially between generations.
True. So they arrive, and the mom, the original poster, says initially things seem okay, despite those earlier little disagreements.
Right, trying to keep the peace.
Then, a day or two into the visit, the plan is for the couple and the father-in-law to go Christmas shopping at a mall about an hour away. Which means leaving Annie, the 13-month-old, back at the house with her grandmother, the mother-in-law, Trish.
Right. And that's a moment of trust, isn't it? You leave your child with a grandparent. You expect them to be safe. You expect your parenting choices to be respected.
Absolutely. So they get back a few hours later, and Annie's napping. But she's on a blanket the mother doesn't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Trish just casually mentions, oh, a friend dropped by and gave it as an early Christmas gift. But the mother notes it looked kind of old, a bit worn.
Okay. A bit odd, maybe, but perhaps plausible at first glance.
Yeah, she just assumes it's, some hand-me-down from a friend's kid or something. She has no idea. No idea what that blanket really represents.
That seemingly innocent object becomes the vector. It's quite chilling how deception can just be slipped into the everyday like that.
And it wasn't just the blanket. Over the next couple of weeks, the mother-in-law, Trish, apparently insists on making all of Annie's meals herself, from scratch.
Ah, the food thing again.
Yeah. The mom mentions Annie usually eats supermarket baby food, perfectly normal stuff. She brings it up with her husband, Jack, but he's like, oh, just let mom do it.
Avoiding conflict.
Seems so. But Annie, being, a one-year-old, mostly just squishes the food or throws it. Typical toddler behavior.
Of course.
But Trish apparently uses this to make these condescending remarks, like Annie needs to get used to nutritious meals, implying the mother isn't feeding her properly.
Wow. Okay, so that's passive-aggressive, undermining the mother's parenting quite directly there.
Yeah.
Even if the husband wants to ignore it.
Right. The mother is understandably getting pretty frustrated by this point, constant interference. But she decides, okay, bite my tongue, keep the peace for the holidays.
A familiar compromise, unfortunately.
But then, the day after Christmas, things change. Annie starts acting really off. Restless, crying, she develops a fever.
Don't you?
The mother keeps a close eye on her, and the fever seems to go down over the next day or two, thankfully. But then, the real shocker, the next morning, Annie wakes up with a rash and blisters all over her arms and legs.
Oh, no, that's not just a little cold. That's clearly something more serious.
Exactly. The mother is naturally incredibly worried. She starts packing a bag immediately to take Annie to the doctor.
Makes sense.
And as she's doing this, Trish comes over and asks where they're going. The mother explains, Annie has this rash, these blisters. I'm taking her to the doctor.
And Trish's reaction.
This is the bit. Trish apparently gets this weird, smug smile on her face and just dismisses it, says, oh, there's nothing to worry about.
A smug smile.
Yeah.
While her grandchild is covered in blisters. That's disturbing.
Right. The mother presses her, like, what do you mean? And that's when Trish just casually drops it. Oh, she has chickenpox.
Just like that. How would she know? Unless.
Exactly. How does she know? Well, she admits it. Apparently, a friend's grandchild had chickenpox a few weeks earlier. So Trish had asked the friend to, get this, wipe a blanket all over the sick child.
No.
Yes. And then bring that blanket over to her house.
The gift blanket.
The gift blanket. The worn blanket Annie had been sleeping on just days before. She deliberately exposed her.
That is, I mean, that's premeditated. It's a deliberate act of infecting a child without consent. It's a massive violation of trust, of parental rights, everything.
The mother was, as you can imagine, absolutely furious. She says she doesn't even remember exactly what she screamed. She'd been up for 2 nights straight with sick Annie.
Understandable. Complete shock and rage.
She confronts Trish, what were you thinking? Her husband and father-in-law try to step in, calm things down.
And Trish? Any remorse?
Not according to the Post. She apparently doubled down, started arguing that getting chickenpox was the best and most natural thing for Annie, for her immunity.
Oh, the natural immunity argument, despite the fact there's a perfectly good vaccine.
Exactly. Annie was on a standard vaccination schedule. She was due to get her chickenpox jab at 18 months. Trish completely disregarded that.
It's based on such outdated thinking. Before the vaccine, maybe people thought that way, but now it ignores all the risks, the potential complications.
Totally. So they rush Annie to the doctor anyway. Doctor confirms, yes, it's chickenpox, gives them advice, keep a nail short, put socks on her hands so she doesn't scratch and scar.
Standard procedure for chickenpox, but awful that it was necessary because of this.
Then, on the drive back from the doctor, the husband, Jack, starts making excuses for his mother.
Oh boy, here we go.
Saying things like, she genuinely thought she was doing what was best.
But seriously. After she deliberately infected their child.
The mother is just incredulous. She cannot believe he's taking his mom's side in this. They argue basically the whole way back until she just tells him she can't even talk to him right now.
I mean, his immediate instinct is to defend the person who harmed his daughter. That flags a huge issue in their relationship, right?
Yeah.
Whose side is he really on?
It seems pretty clear at that moment. Back at the house, poor Annie is miserable, constantly scratching. The mother puts socks on her hands. Trish tries to interact, but the mother just tells her, leave her alone.
Boundaries firmly established. Yeah. Too little, too late maybe, but necessary.
They were meant to stay until Wednesday, but the mother is like, nope, we're leaving tomorrow morning. Starts packing immediately. The anger is just radiating off her. You can tell from the writing.
Absolutely justified anger. Mm-hmm. The situation is intolerable. Deliberate harm, no remorse, and her husband defending the perpetrator. She has to get her child out of there.
You'd think that confrontation, the decision to leave, that would be a peak crisis point, but no, it gets worse.
How can it get worse?
Next morning, Mom gets up super early, starts loading the car quietly. She keeps her keys in her pocket, thankfully. Jack is inside with Krish and his dad, acting pretty normal, seemingly unconcerned.
Ominous.
Annie's still asleep, so the mother carefully puts her in her car seat, closes the car door gently. Jack then comes outside, asks if she's ready to go. She says, yep, as soon as you are.
Okay. Seems like he's accepted their leaving.
That's what she probably thought. But then he calmly says, okay, takes out his set of car keys.
Uh-oh.
And centrally locks the car. With Annie, their sick daughter, inside.
He what? He locked the baby in the car?
Yes. She's stunned, asks him what on earth he's doing. And he says, they are not leaving until she apologizes to his mother.
Apologizes. To the woman who deliberately made their daughter sick. Mm-hmm. And he's using their child as leverage. That's not just defending his mom. That's actively participating in manipulation and, frankly, endangering his child.
It's unbelievable. He then repeats the excuses for Trish. She meant, well, chickenpox doesn't kill you. You're overreacting. You're making Trish feel bad.
Making Trish feel bad? What about their daughter? What about his wife? His priorities are so incredibly skewed.
The mother she mentions, having read Reddit stories like this, tells him straight, you need to prioritize being a father over being a son.
Good for her. Did it get through?
His response, I will always be Trish's son, and that nobody should speak to his mother that way, and she needs to apologize to clear the air.
Wow. Just wow. That reveals such a deeply unhealthy, enmeshed relationship with his mother. Yeah. He cannot see the severity of her actions or his own.
The mother is just floored. She simply asks him again, unlocks the car, let us leave. He refuses, repeatedly. Goes back inside, saying he'll talk to her when she's acting more reasonable.
Leaving her outside with her sick child locked in the car.
But here's the thing. He must have assumed her keys were in the car, maybe in her bag.
Ah, but she had them in her pocket.
Exactly. She waits a beat, probably heart pounding, gets into the driver's seat with her own keys, unlocks it from the inside, and just drives away. Leaves him there.
Yes. Good for her.
Yeah.
Taking control, getting her daughter to safety, that took guts.
Immediately, her phone starts blowing up. Calls from Jack, Trish, the father-in-law, over and over. Eventually, her own family calls her mom, dad, sister Jess. She'd texted Jess briefly the day before, just a hint, so Jess is shocked when she hears the full story now.
Thank goodness for her own family support.
Totally. Once she's safely on the road, she asks Jess to call Jack and basically tell him he's on his own getting home. Her family offers to drive and meet her halfway. She says she just broke down crying in a truck stop parking lot, just relief and gratitude for their support.
What a contrast between the two families. One toxic and manipulative, the other immediately supportive. That support is crucial.
The next few days sound incredibly hard. She's basically up all night, every night, trying to stop Annie scratching. But despite everything, Annie ends up with 5 scars on her face, more on her arms.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Permanent physical reminders of what Trish did and what Jack enabled.
The mother is devastated, naturally. She answers one of Jack's calls at some point, only for him to apparently complain that he didn't recognize this person I had become.
He's blaming her.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Zero self-awareness.
She just hung up. He was due back home for work soon, which she wasn't exactly thrilled about, but she figured they could manage, as long as Trish was far, far away.
A fragile truce, maybe.
But then, late one night, she gets this very formal text message. It's from her father-in-law, but sent using Jack's phone.
Okay. What did it say?
It informed her that Trish had developed shingles and was in the ER.
Shingles. Wait, shingles is caused by the same virus as chickenpox, the varicella-zoster virus.
Yeah.
It reactivates.
Exactly. The irony wasn't lost on the Reddit commenters either. The woman who deliberately gave her granddaughter chickenpox ends up getting shingles herself, likely triggered by the exposure.
Wow. That's quite the karmic twist if you believe in that sort of thing. What else did the text say?
It also said Jack was staying there with his parents to care for Trish, and he'd be working remotely from their house, which means he'd already been there for weeks, looking after his mother.
So instead of coming home to face the music, to maybe try and repair things with his wife and sick child, he stays to care for the person who caused the whole mess, after she gets sick as a direct consequence.
Seems that way. The mother reflects on this, saying that just a few weeks earlier, she was mostly just exhausted and overwhelmed, couldn't quite believe it all.
Understandable. Trauma and exhaustion.
But now, back home, with support, distance, she's starting to see Jack's relationship with his mother with much clearer eyes, how unhealthy it is.
The enmeshment, the inability to prioritize his own family unit.
Yeah. The fact he seems to consistently put Trish first, even over Annie, that's a massive red flag for their future. She ends the post saying she knows they need a very, very serious conversation when he finally gets back.
If he gets back, or rather, what the terms of that return might be. It's a huge turning point for her, realizing the depth of the problem.
So let's pull back a bit and look at some of the wider points that came up in the discussion around this post. One huge one was the danger of locking a sick toddler in a car.
Absolutely. I mean, regardless of the family drama, leaving a 13-month-old, especially one who's ill, alone in a locked car, that's just inherently dangerous. Temperature, distress, needing care. Jack's actions there were incredibly reckless.
And the irony of Trish getting shingles was definitely a hot topic. But also, people pointed out something crucial. Getting chickenpox, especially that young, actually increases Annie's risk of getting shingles herself later in life.
Right. So Trish's actions, far from giving natural immunity, potentially saddle Annie with a higher risk of a painful condition down the road. Not to mention the immediate risks and the scarring.
Totally undermines the whole justification. There was also chat about chickenpox parties, the idea from before the vaccine.
Yeah, I remember hearing about those. The logic, flawed as it might seem now, was get it over with when you're young, because it's generally milder than getting it as an adult.
Right. But as so many people stressed in the comments, that logic is completely obsolete now. We have a safe, effective vaccine.
Exactly. There is zero medical justification for deliberately exposing someone to chickenpox today. It's irresponsible. Full stop.
Some commenters even brought up potential legal consequences for Trish. Child endangerment, maybe even assault, given it was intentional.
Well, intentionally causing harm, exposing a minor to disease without consent. It certainly enters murky legal territory. And Jack locking the child in the car adds another layer. The comments overwhelmingly supported the mother leaving him, seeking full custody.
Which seems totally understandable given the sequence of events. The betrayal by both Trish and Jack is profound.
And the long-term impact on Annie. It's not just the physical scars, though those are bad enough.
Yeah.
It's the increased shingles risk, potentially the emotional fallout as she gets older and understands what happened.
Yeah. And the big question hanging over it all is, will Jack ever get it? Will he ever truly understand the gravity of what he and his mother did?
That remains to be seen, doesn't it? His actions so far don't suggest a high level of insight or remorse.
So wrapping this up, the key things that stand out are just stark. The deliberate infection itself, especially with the vaccine available, the total disregard for the parents' choices and medical advice.
And the husband's reaction.
Yeah.
Defending his mother, escalating the situation by locking the child in the car. It's shocking behavior. And then the very real potential long-term health issues for Annie.
Mm-hmm. What really strikes me is that clash between, these outdated beliefs about natural illness versus modern medicine and vaccines.
Right. And the extreme lengths someone might go to impose their beliefs on others, even harming a child in the process. It really brings home the absolute necessity of prioritizing a child's actual well-being over ideology and respecting parental autonomy.
Absolutely. This whole nightmare scenario really hammers home how vital trust, communication, and clear boundaries are in families, especially around kids' health. It makes you think, what would you do if faced with something like this? How do you even begin to navigate those kinds of fundamental disagreements within your own family?
It's a tough question. And this story leaves us pondering the lasting damage. Can trust ever be rebuilt after something like this? In an age of vaccines, deliberately choosing illness. What does that say about prioritizing your own beliefs over a child's actual health and safety? Is that damage irreparable? Definitely gives you a lot to think about.
All right, moving on to the next story.
The post is titled, I, 32F, purposefully ignored what my husband, 34, told me he wanted for Father's Day. He's now ignoring me and won't accept my apologies. What can I do to make it up to him? And it's from our best of Redditor updates.
Right, so it starts off looking like, a specific couple's argument.
But it quickly spirals into these bigger questions about relationships, expectations, what happens when needs aren't met.
So our mission today isn't just to retell the story. We want to unpack it, understand the initial fight, see how people reacted online, and then look at the pretty unexpected outcome.
Yeah, we're looking for those kind of universal themes about partnerships and clashes and expectations.
Okay, let's dive in then. Where does it start?
So the original poster, she's 32, married 9 years to her husband, who's 34. They've got 2 kids, 8 and 6.
Okay, standard family setup.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the trouble begins, sort of, with Mother's Day that year. The wife says she was really clear she wanted a relaxing day, just chill at home.
Simple enough request, sounds like.
You'd think. But the husband planned a family day out instead. Now, she admits she enjoyed the day itself, but the fact that he completely ignored her actual request, that definitely irked her. It stuck with her.
Okay, I can see that. So then Father's Day comes along.
Right. And the husband says he wants a quiet day at home, specifically to play video games.
Which, she mentions, is something he does a lot anyway in his free time.
Yeah, she throws that detail in.
Yeah.
So here's the twist. Instead of giving him the quiet day he asked for,
She does the same thing he did.
pretty much, she gets tickets for him and the kids to go to an arcade, like an hour away. It's a very direct echo of Mother's Day.
Okay. So, how did that go over?
Well, predictably, not great. Once the kids were asleep, they had a fight. He was angry. His wish was ignored.
And she pointed out the Mother's Day thing.
Immediately,
Yeah.
which then led to him giving her the silent treatment, refusing her apologies.
And how does she feel about apologizing?
That's interesting. She admits in the post she didn't actually feel sorry. She felt kind of justified, but she just wanted the silent treatment to stop.
Right, the tension was the main problem for her at that point, not necessarily regret over the action itself.
Exactly. And, being Reddit, the comments section lit up.
I bet. What were people saying?
A real mix. Some found it, hilarious or totally understandable,
Yeah.
said she shouldn't apologize at all.
Okay. Team wife, sort of.
Yeah. But then you had others who took a different angle, accusing her of resenting her kids because she wanted a day off.
Ah, the classic jump. Did she respond to that?
Oh, yeah. She edited the post pretty strongly to deny that.
Yeah.
Said it wasn't about the kids at all.
So amidst all that, any comments stand out?
There's one from a user, Bad Acid, that got a lot of traction. They suggested the husband probably knew what he was doing on Mother's Day.
Meaning,
Meaning, maybe he planned the outing knowing it wasn't her request, possibly so he could have downtime while she was busy with the kids.
Ah, okay. Implying it wasn't just thoughtless, maybe a bit strategic.
Potentially. And this commenter pointed out the general expectation for Mother's Day and Father's Day is, giving the other parent actual time off, some actual support.
And the wife added some clarifications later, didn't she, about that Mother's Day?
Yes, crucially. She clarified that she took the kids out on Mother's Day while he stayed home and gamed.
Oh. So it wasn't even a family outing he planned where they were all together.
No. He got his downtime while she was still on duty, just out of the house.
Okay, that adds a whole other layer. Her point wasn't, I hate family time. It was, you ignored my request and did the opposite, giving yourself what I wanted.
Precisely. It was about the disregarded request and the lack of reciprocation.
Right, so this whole thing seems like a communication breakdown, maybe some resentment building. Where does it go next?
Well, this is where it takes a really sharp turn. 4 months after the original post, she adds an update. It's short. Basically says they're getting divorced.
Wow, okay. That escalated.
Yeah. Her tone is very brief, almost. Resigned. She even mentioned being surprised the original post got so much attention.
Did anyone ask if he ever, understood the parallel she was trying to draw?
Someone did. A user named Corfus74 asked exactly that. Did he ever get why the Father's Day gift mirrored the Mother's Day one?
And her answer?
She said he still claimed the situations were different.
Huh. So no acknowledgement of the similarity from his side.
Apparently not. Which really highlights that lack of empathy, maybe. Or just an inability to see his own actions reflected back.
Makes sense why she then said she hoped for a future partner with just basic empathy.
Exactly. Someone who could understand her needs without needing this kind of tit-for-tat lesson.
Was there anything else significant in those updates?
One really stark comment she made. The husband, her soon-to-be ex, didn't want custody of the children.
Oof. That's heavy. Especially after the whole fight was ostensibly about family time and appreciation days.
Right. And then fast forward another 7 months, so a full year after the original Father's Day incident, she posts again on Mother's Day.
And how was that now that she was divorced?
Her words were infinitely better.
Infinitely better. Wow.
Yeah, she described just a simple, lazy morning, making pancakes with the kids, getting their handmade cards, no stress, no messy kitchen left for her, no unwanted gifts, just calm.
What a contrast. And that really leads into the next phase of the discussion online, doesn't it? The comments after the divorce update.
Oh, absolutely. A huge theme emerged there with tons of commenters chiming in.
Which was?
Basically, how much better life got for many women after divorcing husbands who seemed to be, well, more of a burden than a partner.
So the absence actually made things easier.
That was the overwhelming sentiment in many replies. People shared stories, like a friend who finally got house repairs done and could manage kids' activities easily once the husband was gone.
Things he was maybe supposed to handle or just didn't help with.
Exactly. Another commenter, a single mom with an infant, put it bluntly. Her life was much, much easier as a single mom than married with the baby and, presumably, an unhelpful partner.
That really speaks volumes about the invisible workload, doesn't it?
It really does. It wasn't just that the husbands weren't pulling their weight. Their presence often seemed to add work.
How so? What kind of examples came up?
Things like not having to constantly remind someone to do chores or cleaning up after them. One person mentioned gaining physical space because the ex was a hoarder.
Okay.
Regular dinner times, easier cleanup, even financial improvements because they weren't supporting the ex's spending habits anymore. No more last minute, hey, watch the kids dumping, being able to hire help without an argument.
So less managing another adult, basically.
Precisely. A cleaner house, fewer overall chores. It paints a picture where the husband was contributing negatively to the household balance.
That phrase man-child comes up a lot in these kinds of discussions, doesn't it?
It does. And there was that one really vivid anecdote someone shared.
Which one was that?
A woman mowing her lawn in the Texas heat,
Oh.
husband inside watching football, and she just had this moment of clarity. Why the F do I even have him around?
And that was it.
That was the catalyst for her divorce.
Yeah.
It's such a stark image of that breaking point.
It really is. And it's not just the physical work, right? The comments touched on the emotional side, too.
Definitely. Less conflict, less managing someone else's moods or defensiveness. And interestingly, several people mentioned that even the kids seemed better off sometimes.
Oh, so.
The kids pick up on the tension in an unhappy marriage, and sometimes the relative peace after a divorce, even if it's harder in other ways, can be a relief for them too.
That makes sense. Were there other areas of life people saw improvements in?
Holidays and vacations were mentioned a lot. Less stress, No negative energy or controlling behavior from the ex, just more relaxed, enjoyable times.
And what about the ex-husband's reactions to all this newfound peace and competence?
Ah, yes. A recurring theme was the ex being surprised, even confused, by how well the wife was doing post-divorce.
Like they didn't expect her to manage.
Exactly. Or sometimes they'd even say things like, why didn't you take better care of yourself like this when we were married?
Seriously, without seeing their own role in her stress.
Completely missing the connection. It's a fascinating if frustrating pattern. Like they genuinely didn't understand how much their behavior impacted their partner's well-being.
It also sounds like, in this specific case and maybe others, the threat of divorce was maybe used as a tool.
It seems possible. The comments touched on that dynamic, the husband expecting the wife to fall in line when divorce is mentioned, then being shocked when she calls his bluff or even welcomes it.
And the original poster mentioned he refused counseling until divorce was on the table.
Yes. And then suddenly wanted to try for the kids. But she felt it was way too late by then. The damage was done.
And going back to the custody thing, him not wanting custody, that really stood out to commenters too, right?
Hugely. People found it incredibly sad for the kids, especially given the context. It reinforces that idea of an uneven investment in parenting.
Yeah, some commenters speculated he probably did the fun dad stuff while she handled the daily grind, cooking, cleaning, logistics.
That was a common theory. The less glamorous but essential parts of raising kids falling mostly on her.
And the speculation about his future involvement.
Yeah, some cynical but perhaps realistic predictions. Maybe reappearing later when the kids are older and easier, wanting to co-sign their successes without putting in the hard yards.
Or blaming her for child support payments.
Right. Potentially spreading negative stories about her. The classic narrative some divorced fathers adopt.
Someone used a bank account analogy.
Yeah, I like that one. A relationship is like a bank account. One partner can't keep making withdrawals, taking energy, time, support, if the other isn't making deposits. Eventually, it's just empty.
And the husband's, it's different when I do it, attitude. Where does that come from, do you think, based on the comments?
The consensus seemed to be a deep-seated, maybe unconscious belief that his wife's primary role was to serve him and raise his kids, a fundamental lack of viewing her as an equal partner with her own needs.
So the refusal to see the Mother's Day, Father's Day parallel wasn't just stubbornness, it was rooted in that unequal worldview.
That was the interpretation, that he probably understood why she was upset on some level, but admitting it would mean acknowledging the inequality. So instead, silent treatment, denial, then threatening divorce when that didn't work.
It's a defense mechanism, almost.
Seems like it. Avoid accountability at all costs. And again, this led back to comments about the stereotype of the divorced guy blaming the ex, complaining about money, claiming she keeps the kids from him.
Even if he didn't initially want custody.
Right. The narrative shifts to fit his perceived victimhood later on.
There was also a point about some men only getting interested in parenting later.
Yeah, commenters observe that sometimes men become more engaged fathers only when they have a new partner to impress or when the kids are older, past the really intensive baby-toddler stages.
It's a bleak picture in some ways.
It can be, though one commenter offered a bit of dark humor, saying sometimes the trash takes itself out, a blunt way of expressing relief when a draining relationship ends.
And the man-child label came up again, but with a correction.
Yes, someone pushed back slightly, saying, well, the behavior might seem childish. These are grown men acting with intent, and they hold more power in the dynamic than an actual child would. It's not just immaturity, it's choices.
That's a really important distinction. There was a statistic mentioned, too, about housework.
That married mothers, on average, actually do more housework than single mothers.
More. Wow, that feeds right into the husband adds work idea.
Absolutely. It suggests that for some women, the partnership itself creates additional domestic labor.
There was also a comment about the timing of Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Oh yeah, that was a zinger. Something like, the real gift of Mother's Day is that it comes before Father's Day.
Why?
That way you know how much effort to put forth. Never put more effort in than your partner is willing to.
Ouch. A bit cynical, but based on this story, maybe practical advice for some.
It definitely resonated in that comment section. It speaks to that feeling of constantly overgiving in a relationship that isn't reciprocal.
And this whole situation was framed by some as a kind of case study.
Yeah, a case study in how marriage, or at least certain types of marriages, can disproportionately benefit men, and maybe why some studies show single women reporting higher life satisfaction than married women.
Which brings us back to the original poster's final update.
Right. That simple, powerful statement. Mother's Day is infinitely better now that I'm single than it was when I was married. That really says it all, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I mean, it starts with a seemingly small conflict over gift giving, right? But it explodes into these huge themes about respect, empathy, and especially the distribution of labor, both physical and emotional, in a partnership.
And how unmet needs and a lack of feeling seen can just erode everything.
Exactly. And then the surprising part, maybe, is how divorce, which we often see as this purely negative thing, can actually lead to a significant improvement in well-being for the person who felt they were carrying the relationship.
Yeah, that's the real aha moment for me, I think. The sheer volume of comments echoing that sentiment that removing the non-contributing partner actually freed up energy and time, reduced stress. It flips the script on marriage always being the better or easier option.
It really does. It suggests some partnerships become essentially an extra job for one person.
So for you, the learner, listening to this, we hope digging into this one Reddit story gave you a quick but deep look at these dynamics, maybe some food for thought about relationships and expectations.
And it leaves us with a bigger question, doesn't it? Thinking about all these stories, the original post, the comments, what are the societal expectations around partnership, around motherhood and fatherhood that set the stage for these kinds of imbalances?
Right. Are our assumptions about who does what still stuck somewhere they shouldn't be?
How does that need to change for partnerships to be more genuinely equal and supportive? Definitely something to mull over.
All right, moving on to the next story. You are about to hear a story that is just, it's so wild, it sounds completely made up, like straight out of a movie. Imagine this. You stumble upon this amazing collection of classic cars, real treasures, just sitting there. You manage to buy them for a price that feels, well, almost unbelievable.
Yeah, like too good to be true.
Exactly, from this lovely elderly widow who basically just wants them to go to someone who will appreciate them.
Be good home.
Right. So fast forward a couple of years, the widow sadly passes away, and then boom, a man shows up right at your front door, says he's her grandson.
Oh, boy.
And he's demanding the cars back, threatening to sue you. Oh, and just to add a little spice, he says he's a practicing lawyer.
Wow. And not just any lawyer, right? Like specializing in something that gives the threat a bit more heft, just layers of audacity right from the get-go.
Absolutely. So this incredible saga, this is what we're diving into today. It comes from, honestly, one of my favorite spots online, our Best of Redditor updates on Reddit.
Yeah, great source.
It is, because people share the updates.
Oh.
What happened after they first posted asking for advice.
Which is gold, because you get the whole story arc. You see the community advice, the unexpected twists, and how it all wraps up. It gives you that full picture.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really unpack this whole thing. We'll follow the pretty bizarre sequence of events, look at the legal angles that popped up, how they played out, and dig into those bigger human questions the comments brought up, like what really motivates people with these prized possessions, especially something like classic cars, you know? So much history tied up in them.
And there are definitely some moments in this story and in the commentary around it that just make you go, wow. Real eye-openers about human nature and how people value things.
Okay, let's jump in. So our main character, the original poster, let's call him OOP, he says he found these cars a few years back.
Right.
He was actually helping out his coworker's elderly mom, just doing some jobs around her house. And her neighbor was this woman, Elaine. She was in her early 90s, recently widowed.
Okay. And Elaine's late husband, he was the car enthusiast, had several older Australian models on their property. OOP drove his own classic Falcon over one day. Elaine saw it, and that sparked the conversation. She showed him the collection.
And we're not talking just a couple of bold runabouts here. It was 5 cars total.
Right.
3 were apparently drivable, in decent shape, and 2 were basically wrecks, you know, for parts.
There were specific models, right? Like an XY GT replica?
Yeah, an XB Fairmont Coupe, an XA Sedan Falcon 506. Those were the drivers. Then an XA sedan wreck and an XW wreck for parts. OOP said they looked a bit like yard art.
Yeah. Okay, but here's a really key point. OOP was apparently totally upfront with Elaine about what these cars might be worth on the market. He knew some of them, like that XD Coupe, were really desirable. Proper Aussie classics could fetch a serious amount.
Which is tricky, right? Because OOP knew he couldn't actually afford the full market value at the time.
Right.
But Elaine, she had a different priority. It wasn't about squeezing every last cent out of them. She just really wanted them to go to someone who'd appreciate them, who'd look after them, kind of carrying on her husband's passion.
And that focus, that appreciation factor, led to the deal. After some back and forth, she agreed to sell him the whole lot, all 5 cars, for just $5,000.
$5,000 for everything.
Which is, I mean, it's pretty astonishing when you hear in the comments that just the XB coupe alone could be worth, what, over $100,000 today? Maybe more?
Easily, yeah. It just perfectly sets up this central theme, doesn't it? Sentimentality, appreciation, fell way above the cash.
Absolutely.
So, okay, OOP buys the cars, takes them home, spends the next couple of years looking after them, gets 2 of the drivers onto historic registration. Everything seems fine, you know, settled. And then, sadly, Elaine passed away.
Right, and that's when things take a very sharp turn.
Yeah. Sometime after she passed, this man gets OOP's contact details somehow, calls him up, introduces himself as Elaine's grandson.
And the tone wasn't friendly, I gather.
Not at all. Immediately aggressive, threatening to sue OOP for, quote, effectively stealing the cars from his grandmother.
Wow. Stealing them after a documented sale.
Right. And it wasn't just phone calls. This guy actually showed up at OOP's house, stood on the doorstep demanding the cars back.
Whoa. That's intense. Incredibly intimidating, I'd imagine.
Totally. And to make himself seem more legit, or maybe more threatening, he actually gives OOP his business card.
Okay.
Lists his name, says he's a lawyer, specializing in commercial and insurance law.
Huh. So OP could check that out.
Yep. OOP went online, checked the law firm's website. Sure enough, there's the guy. Photo matches, listed as employed there.
So he is a lawyer.
But it felt completely wrong, as OOP said. I mean, if there was a genuine legal issue with the cars, with the estate,
Right.
you'd expect official contact, right? Through the executor, probably by registered mail.
Exactly. Not some guy showing up making personal threats. Sounds really unprofessional, even if he was family.
Yeah. And OOP's gut feeling, which I think is fascinating, was that the guy was, quote, banking on my uncertainty.
Ah, okay. Trying to leverage the lawyer title, the aggression, hoping OOP would just panic and fold, give the cars back, maybe pay him off, without really questioning it.
Makes sense. And the early advice OOP got on Reddit kind of echoed that feeling. Lots of people, you know, saying NAL, not a lawyer, but pointing out the obvious. If Elaine owned the cars legally, she could sell them.
A grandson probably wouldn't have a leg to stand on, especially coming in after the fact like this. The general vibe was, tell him to back off unless he sends something official, like a summons.
Yeah, pretty much thought off unless you get actual legal papers.
And this whole business card thing, giving it out while making personal threats, that starts to blur ethical lines for a lawyer, doesn't it?
You'd think so. People in the comments were already debating, you know, should OOP complain to the firm, to the legal board? Maybe a bit early, but the potential for misconduct was definitely flagged right away.
Okay, but hold on, because this is where the story just takes a massive twist. Remember, this guy is claiming he's Elaine's grandson.
Right, the whole basis for his claim.
So OOP, still trying to process all this, talks to his coworker, the one whose mom lived next door to Elaine.
Okay.
The coworker talks to his mother, the neighbor, and the neighbor drops a bombshell. Elaine had no grandsons?
What? None. So who on earth was this guy?
The neighbor knew him. He was an old ex-boyfriend or ex-partner of one of Elaine's granddaughters.
No way.
Yes. They'd apparently been together for years, but split up long before any of this.
Yeah.
Zero actual family connection to Elaine or her direct heirs.
Wow. Just wow. So the entire claim was fabricated. He wasn't family at all. He just knew about the cars, maybe heard Elaine passed away and saw an opportunity.
Looks like it. A completely manufactured identity to try and pressure OOP.
So what about the real family? Elaine's actual kids. Did OOP manage to connect with them?
He did. The coworker's mother was still in touch with Elaine's son and daughter, who were handling the estate and dealing with the house. She connected them with OOP.
Okay, moment of truth. How did they react? Were they upset about the sale?
Not even slightly. It was the complete opposite.
Really?
Yeah. Elaine's son and daughter apparently just reiterated their dad's wish that the cars should go to someone who genuinely cherished them, keep them going. They were actually happy OOP had them, was taking care of them. They were glad he got in touch.
That's actually really nice. It completely validates Elaine's decision, doesn't it? And that whole appreciation over money thing.
Perfectly. It shows her wishes and her late husband's wishes were honored, and the actual family supported that entirely.
So the scammer's whole story just collapses. The legitimate heirs are fine with it. So what was this guy's deal? Why go to such extreme fraudulent lengths?
Well, the strong suspicion based on what OOP learned in the Reddit comments, was money problems. Serious debt.
Ah.
People speculated about causes.
Hmm.
Gambling was mentioned. Apparently, it's a significant issue in Australia where this took place.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe other expensive habits. But the consensus seemed to be desperation. He was likely in deep financial trouble.
That makes a certain kind of grim sense. Desperate people do desperate, sometimes stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they think they can flash a professional title and scare someone.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, even after OP knew the truth, knew the family was okay with it, did the guy stop? Did the harassment end there?
Unbelievably, no. It got worse. The fake grandson came back to OP's house twice more after that initial visit.
Get out! After OP knew he was lying.
Yep, and he kept sending threatening texts, making harassing phone calls, even after OOP explicitly told him, stop contacting me unless it's official in writing. He just ignored it.
That's not just desperate anymore, that's crossing into serious harassment territory. Stalking, almost. What did OP do then? He knew the guy was a fake, but he was still being hassled.
Wisely, OOP lawyered up himself, hired his own legal counsel.
Good move.
And critically, he documented everything. Meticulously. Home security footage of the visits, dash cam video from his car catching the guy, saved every text, logged every call.
Smart. Very smart.
Then, with his lawyer's help, they filed formal complaints about this guy's conduct, sent them straight to his law firm and also to the relevant legal regulatory body, the people who oversee lawyers' ethics.
Okay, hitting him where it hurts professionally.
Exactly. And then OOP informed the fake grandson that these complaints had been officially lodged.
What happened then?
Silence. Complete radio silence. The harassment stopped dead in its tracks. OOP hasn't heard a peep from him since.
Huh. Okay, so the threat of professional consequences worked, but what actually happened to the guy's career? Did the complaints go anywhere?
This is the final beautiful twist from the updates. Turns out, the fake grandson had already been fired from his law firm.
Before OOP even complained?
Before OOP and his lawyer even filed. And crucially, he already had other complaints stacked up against him from totally separate incidents.
Oh, wow. So OOP situation was just the tip of the iceberg.
Seems like it. The Reddit community, naturally, had a field day with this. Lots of comments like, world's dumbest lawyer, desperate and immoral.
Yeah, I can imagine.
People speculated his firing. And the other complaints were likely for similar behavior, maybe harassment, intimidation, trying to use his firm's name or his lawyer's status improperly. The possibility of him being disbarred entirely was definitely discussed.
Sounds like this wasn't his first rodeo trying to pull a shady stunt. His unethical behavior finally caught up with him, big time.
It really does. And the contrast is just so stark, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got OOP acting honestly, respecting the seller's wishes.
Right, and the real family being grateful for that.
Exactly. And then you have this fake grandson resorting to lies, threats, attempted fraud, harassment, and it all just blew up in his face. Cost him his job, maybe his whole career.
It's a pretty potent lesson in honesty versus dishonesty, really.
It truly is.
And it loops back so well to that idea we started with value. Not just the dollars and cents, but the sentimental value, the history, the importance of appreciation.
Yeah. Elaine and her family clearly prioritized finding the right caretaker for those cars, not just the highest bidder.
And the comments section, you said, was full of similar stories, especially in the classic car world.
Oh, yeah, tons of them. People sharing stories of selling valuable cars, Mustangs, Chevys, Challengers, whatever, for way under market value. Yeah. Why? Because they wanted them to go to a real enthusiast, someone who'd restore it, love it, drive it, not just flip it for a quick buck.
It's that whole idea of being the next caretaker, isn't it? Not just the owner, like you're preserving a piece of history.
Exactly. It's a different mindset. And it applies beyond cars, too, as the comments pointed out.
How so?
People talked about giving away or selling other valued things cheap, like old tools, a piano, maybe nice furniture, even designer clothes.
Yeah.
They'd use community groups or word of mouth, specifically to find someone who genuinely appreciate and use the item.
Right, filtering out the resellers or the vultures. I saw examples like a cement mixer going to an artist, instruments to students, interview clothes to someone starting out, even community food sharing. It's honoring the item's purpose or story.
It's quite heartwarming, actually, and especially refreshing here. Like you said, not seeing the family fight over the inheritance. The real family was totally aligned with the parents' wishes.
It is refreshing, but the story is also, a pretty sharp reminder about practicalities when things go sideways.
Absolutely. If you face threats, especially from someone claiming professional status. You have to document everything. OPP's diligence with the cameras, texts, call logs, that was crucial. They gave his complaints real teeth.
Yeah, that documentation is your shield and your sword in situations like that.
And it also highlights the ethical responsibilities that come with being a professional, especially a lawyer. Using your title to bully someone in a personal matter, that's a massive breach. And this story shows there could be serious real-world fallout.
So when we boil this whole wild story down, what's the takeaway for you listening right now?
Well, I think this deep dive gives us a really vivid look at how weirdly human behavior and value intersect. We're talking market value versus sentimental value, history, appreciation.
Right, and it's definitely a cautionary tale. Shows the sheer nerve some scammers have, even people who should know better, who have professional standing.
It hammers home why you need to verify things, protect yourself, get that documentation, maybe get legal help if you're being targeted.
But there's a positive side too, isn't there? The power of just being decent, honoring intentions.
Definitely. Elaine wanted the cars appreciated. OOP did that. The family respected it. That honesty ultimately won out over the fake grandson's whole web of lies and aggression.
Yeah.
His scheme just couldn't stand up to reality.
So yeah, it's a memorable, kind of bizarre lesson. Spot the scam, stand your ground carefully, and maybe see that doing the right thing can actually work out.
So here's something to think about, maybe mull over later. What really is the difference between an item's price tag and its actual value? You know, its value to the original owner or their family or the person who's going to genuinely care for it next.
Yeah. What things in your own life have that kind of value way beyond money? And what would you hope happens to them someday?
Good question. Something to reflect on.
Definitely. All right, moving on to the next story.
So let's jump right into the mystery itself.
Huh.
Picture this.
Yeah.
You've just moved into a new house.
Okay.
Your 4-year-old son loves his new room, takes it immediately, settles right in, no problems at all for a whole year. Bedtime routines are smooth, he's happy in his space.
Sounds ideal. And then, just out of nowhere, everything changes. He spends that afternoon playing happily in his room, totally normal. But that same night, he absolutely refuses to go in, insists on sleeping in his parents' room instead.
And it's not just a nighttime thing either. This fear, it carries over into the daytime. He just will not go in. They try holding his hand, encouraging him, you know. But he refuses to fully cross the threshold. If he needs a specific toy, he'll only step like a few feet inside the doorway, snatch it, and then run right back out.
Wow. Okay. And he's okay with his bathroom, which is right across the hall.
Yeah, that's fine.
But he insists that door stays firmly closed. And then after his bath, he just bolts straight from the bathroom right into his parents' room. No detours.
And the weirdest part, when his parents try to ask him why, why won't you go in your room, buddy? He completely deflects.
Oh, so.
According to the source, he'll either scream, "Cowboy hat," which apparently is like a character from the show Bluey, or he'll just start giggling and naming animals. Cow, dog, elephant. Just random animals.
Right. Which is understandably baffling and pretty frustrating for the parents. I mean, their initial thoughts, and this was echoed by early commenters too, ranged from, maybe a bad dream
Sure.
to perhaps fireworks spooking him, although apparently he wasn't usually bothered by them. Or maybe he'd done something silly, like had an accident in the room and was embarrassed.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the mother checks the room top to bottom, every corner, confirms nothing physical has changed. She even tries sleeping in his room herself, hoping maybe her presence would help, or she might spot something.
And still nothing.
Still, he won't go near it.
Okay. And then there's this crucial detail that comes out in an update to the original post.
Right, the update.
The mother mentions hearing an animal, probably a squirrel, scurrying on their metal roof one afternoon. Their ceiling has exposed beams, apparently, so they hear everything up there.
Okay.
And this made her wonder if it was connected to him sometimes naming animals when they asked about the room.
A scary sound on the roof. That feels like, a potential lead, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe he associated his room with that sound.
Possibly. But it still didn't quite explain the depth of the fear or that total refusal to even enter the room.
No, not completely.
So the real breakthrough, as the update details, comes about a month later. The mother's still gently working with him, encouraging him to interact with the room, just starting from the doorway.
Right, slowly, slowly. She manages to get him to step a little further inside, talking about his toys. And that's when she tries a slightly different tactic, pointing to various objects in the room and asking about them. And he is a huge reaction to something specific.
Okay, what was it?
An object that had been hanging over his bed since they moved in a whole year prior. It was a Marvel poster.
Wait, a poster. Something he'd seen every single day, presumably for a year, without any issue. That was the source of this month-long terror.
That's what the update says. It describes his reaction when she took it down and brought it into their room, the parents' room, for him to see clearly. He immediately freaked out and just dove under the covers.
Wow, okay. So at that point, the mother just makes the call, declares the poster is going straight in the garbage. He'll never see it again. She hides it downstairs, tells him it's gone for good.
And the transformation, it was immediate and really dramatic.
Tell me.
It's actually kind of heartwarming to read. He leaps out of their bed, runs straight to his room, starts jumping up and down, all excited, screaming, "Evil face is gone."
Evil face is gone. Wow.
He goes right to his bed, tosses her pillow off it, puts his own favorite pillow on, and just tucks himself in like nothing ever happened.
Incredible. And he slept in his room that night? First time in a month?
Yep. And since then, totally back to normal, perfectly happy there, actually playing more in his room than before. And apparently, he confirms nightly that the evil face is gone and his room is fun.
That's amazing. So, okay, what was this poster exactly? You said Marvel?
Yeah, a framed poster, apparently with over 100 Marvel superheroes and villains. His dad's a big comic book fan, apparently. And the kid knew a lot of the characters already. The mother initially guessed maybe it was, some of the creepier-looking villains like MODOK or Ego the Living Planet that might have scared him.
Yeah, some of those designs are pretty intense. Commenters on the thread apparently added other possibilities, too, like Armin Zola or Red Skull.
Oh, yeah, Red Skull. Creepy.
Noting how inherently unsettling some of those character designs can be. One commenter even mentioned Lockjaw, the teleporting dog, with those solid, white, pupilless eyes.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. But here's where it gets really interesting, digging into another observation from the comments section.
Go on.
One commenter apparently zoomed way in on a photo of this poster and pointed out something fascinating. While the overall image looks like, Happy Avengers fun time from a distance,
right.
If you look really closely, many of the individual faces are actually kind of distorted, almost Picasso-like or sinister-looking.
Ah, okay, so up close it's different.
Exactly. The mother confirmed this. She agreed that she'd actually thought some of the faces looked a bit sinister when her husband first put it up, but she just dismissed it.
Right, because it was just a poster, always been there.
Yeah. It just didn't occur to her that this familiar object could possibly be the problem. From a distance, it seemed fine, but up close, maybe in dim light, or maybe like after a confusing moment, like hearing that animal on the roof. Those distorted faces could easily become, as the commenter put it, straight nightmare fuel to a young kid.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That revelation that it was this really familiar thing leads us right to that core question your sources raise. How can something like a poster, something seen every day, maybe even like before, suddenly become terrifying?
Yeah, how does that flip happen?
Well, what this story highlights so powerfully is just the fundamental difference in how children and adults perceive the world and the incredible power of imagination at that age, Young children are still developing their visual processing, their ability to differentiate reality from imagination. Their brains are practically wired to find patterns, especially faces, in all sorts of things. Wood grain, wallpaper, clouds.
Or a busy illustration with tons of tiny figures.
Exactly. So one specific detail, a character's weird expression, a strange shadow on the poster, a particularly unsettling illustration style on just one face out of 100 that can suddenly jump out.
Right.
And if it's viewed at the wrong moment, or maybe gets connected even loosely to something else scary, like that noise on the roof, or maybe a bad dream he had, that previously neutral object can suddenly flip in their perception. It becomes something genuinely terrifying to them.
So what seems harmless, maybe even fun, to us as adults is filtered through a child's very different way of thinking.
Precisely. They don't have the life experience or, the rational tools yet to put it all in context. That evil face wasn't just ink on paper on the wall in that moment. In his mind, it was a terrifying presence right there in his room.
And that connects back to you, the listener, right? It probably resonates with a lot of us. Think about your own childhood. Were there things that scared you that seem completely silly now?
Oh, definitely.
That tree branch outside the window that looked like a monster at night? Or a specific doll that just felt creepy? The shadows in a certain corner, this kind of intense, seemingly irrational fear tied to everyday objects is, well, it's a really common part of being a kid.
And the comments on this original Reddit story provide this incredible, sometimes chilling gallery of exactly these kinds of fears. It's so clear with this child's experience, while specific to him and his poster, wasn't isolated at all. People shared just countless similar stories.
It's fascinating just seeing the patterns emerge from all those comments. One major category is definitely seeing frightening faces
Well,
pretty much everywhere.
absolutely. Terrifying faces and paintings were super common in the responses. Everything from a picture of Jesus fighting the devil that one commenter's mother actually burned because her child was so scared, to a statue of Mary stepping on Satan as a snake, where the child was terrified for the snake, didn't want Mary to hurt it.
And sad clowns, of course. Paintings, creepy knit dolls. Those came up a lot. One person was terrified by just a painting of a farmhouse in the snow because it looked haunted to them.
And it wasn't just paintings. Wallpaper patterns, wood grain could become monsters. Somebody saw a skeksis, from the dark crystal in their wood grain.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see that.
Another saw a wolf face. Mirrors could be scary, too. One was described as having a yelling face. Even illustrations in books like a witch with slime dripping from her hands were apparently so terrifying they caused kids to fold the page over just to avoid seeing it.
Just trying to hide it.
Yeah. And then moving beyond static images, a huge category involves toys that seem to come alive.
Oh, the creepy toy stories. Especially anything with electronics, right? Like Tickle Me Ernie or Furby's malfunctioning, making unexpected noises.
Particularly when the batteries were dying. That seemed to be peak creepiness. People remembered them saying things like, mihanji, or just loud sound, or maybe random unsettling giggling coming from a closet.
Yeah. There was this widespread feeling almost that these things are somehow immortal or possessed. Someone even mentioned that old story, maybe true, maybe not, about the Department of Defense banning Furbies because they might record things.
Right. And Teletubbies and Boo Bahs also haunted quite a few childhoods, according to the comments.
Oh, yeah, Boo Bahs.
Teletubbies saying odd things like, a can of gas instead of again. And Boo Bahs were just universally described as lumpy and scary, with these unsettling beady eyes, often ended up being the villains in playtime or just gotten rid of.
There was that great anecdote about a Teletubby being yeeted out of a window.
Yes, and apparently yelling beep, beep, beep on the way down.
Hilarious. And other dolls, too, talking dolls that apparently even scared the adults. Porcelain dolls lined up outside doors or people thought they were whispering.
Dolls that would just mysteriously fall over. And one particularly chilling story involved a porcelain doll lamp that supposedly set a room on fire, which, would definitely cement its evil status.
You think?
Yeah.
And stuffed animals weren't immune either. A King Louis doll that mysteriously turned to face the corner. A Paddington bear who ate too much marmalade.
How is that scary? Yeah, well, or a giant bumblebee cardboard cutout that was just seen as fundamentally creepy.
Okay. And beyond objects, you also saw situational and environmental fears popping up a lot.
Yeah, definitely. The moon looking like a face, or maybe appearing to be in the wrong place in the sky. Driving fears came up too, like the road won't ever end or the sun won't rise tomorrow morning.
Simple things, too, like just open closet doors being terrifying. Specific rooms, like a dark basement or a creepy bathroom closet. Even something as simple as a coat hanging on the back of a door casting scary shadows at night.
And sadly, a kind of difficult thread running through many of these comments was how adults sometimes responded to these fears.
Yeah, that was tough to read sometimes.
There were numerous anecdotes where adults just underestimated the fear or laughed at it or even intentionally leveraged it.
Like using a motion-sensing mummy toy to keep a kid in bed.
Right, or an uncle pulling a werewolf mask prank, or putting a Gremlins plushie in a microwave empty, obviously to scare a cousin.
It really makes you pause when you read that commenter who just directly asks, why do adults think it's funny to scare kids?
It's such a powerful reminder. Because while these fears might seem completely irrational to us looking back or as adults, they are absolutely real and deeply distressing for the child experiencing them right then.
Which brings us right back to the core takeaway from that original story, doesn't it?
Exactly. This child at 4 years old, he couldn't articulate why the poster scared him. He couldn't say, hey, Mom, that specific character's face is distorted in a way I find deeply unsettling.
Right, he just screamed, cowboy hat.
Yeah. But his fear was completely real, and it was tied to something very specific in his environment, even if he couldn't name it.
And his parents, despite checking the room for all the obvious problems, they didn't immediately suspect the poster because, well, it had just always been there.
Yeah.
Part of the furniture, basically.
It took that persistent effort. and trying a different approach, encouraging him to interact and actually point at objects to finally identify the actual source.
Precisely. And the crucial insight here, I think, is that just dismissing a child's fear, no matter how silly or irrational it seems to an adult, it doesn't make the fear go away.
Not at all. Validating the feeling, saying, I see you're scared, and then working to identify its specific source, like the mother eventually did, that was the key to actually resolving the problem.
And once the actual source, which turned out to be just a simple object that could be removed, was found.
The solution was incredibly simple. Take the poster down. Fear gone.
It wasn't a ghost, wasn't a monster under the bed, wasn't even really the squirrel on the roof. It was just a picture on the wall. An evil face that, for whatever reason, only he could really see clearly at that point.
And once that source was removed, the room was safe again. The fear vanished almost immediately.
It really makes you think, though, doesn't it? Given all these surprising things that can become genuinely terrifying in childhood, things we might completely overlook as adults.
Yeah.
What unseen evil faces or maybe seemingly ordinary objects might be subtly shaping our own discomforts or anxieties, even irrational dislikes now as adults?
That's a fascinating thought. What things have we encountered, maybe briefly, maybe seemingly insignificantly, that had a bigger emotional impact than we consciously registered at the time, leaving behind some kind of residual unease that we can't quite name or trace back to its origin? It's definitely something to consider as you look around your own space.